Um, but yeah, just a little intro. My name is Peter Dudley. I'm the Big Sky Watershed Corps member with Montana Audubon. And while the focus of my position is on conservation ranching for bird conservation in Montana, I do help out and support the citizen science efforts. So if you've been emailing me, nice to see you. And Carmen, do you want to say a little bit about yourself too?
Yeah, so I previously held the Big Sky Watershed Corps position and was able to pilot this project last year. So it's really exciting to be around for the second year and continue to build on this project. I am currently the legislative assistant next to right underneath Amy Seaman. So we've been working our butts off with this legislative session, and we've been killing a lot of bills, which is great. We just got some good news yesterday and about another bill being killed. So we're pretty stoked about that, and pretty stoked about summertime with the citizen science projects beginning, and the birds are coming back to Montana. So we're, all very excited about this time of year.
Yeah, and if you can see the other people pictured there, that's Amy Seaman in the top left. She's the Director of Policy and Science, so she's in charge of Carmen in the legislative side and my position on the bird conservation side. And then that is Bo Crease on the top right. His position is through a partnership with Montana Natural Heritage Program. He's our avian technician data specialist. And he's kind of our go-to guy for biological and ecological information and birding. So that's our little intro. I guess we'll get into it and talk a little bit about just a little bit on the Big Sky Watershed Corps program and my position, the position that Carmen held last year. It's a partnership with Montana Conservation Corps, the Soil and Water Conservation Districts of Montana, and Montana Watershed Coordination Council. So it's a partnership between these three organizations that funds AmeriCorps positions across the state and all towards the benefit of the Big Sky watershed. And so I guess we'll talk a little bit about Great Blue Herons. I know you all know quite a bit too. The reason why we're doing this work is because they're considered a species of concern. And towards that goal, we are conducting citizen science projects. So believe it or not, our largest and very charismatic heron is a species of concern here. It's known around the world, sometimes a Hernshaw or a blue crane in the old world, but the Great Blue Heron is known for its elaborate courtship displays and its hunting habits, like spearfishing. And I've even heard that they sometimes sprinkle powder on the water to expose their prey. So they're really interesting animals, and we're really excited that we can dive in to study them. But before I get carried away on the herons, I'll show you all a little bit of our agenda today. We'll be talking a bit about the natural history, some of the project background, and then Carmen will take over and do the website walkthrough and a walkthrough of the Survey 123 app and the survey protocols. So to fill out a little bit more of the Great Blue Heron natural history, we describe them as one of Montana's 18 species of colonial water bird. If you can see on there, we have everything from pelicans to terns that are represented in the colonial water bird category. While often nests of the smaller species might go undetected, it's pretty hard to miss a Great Blue Heron rookery. When you see it, you know it, and they're pretty fun to go spy on. Great Blue Herons are reliant on Montana's water-based habitats. We really should mention the importance of these habitats too. Herons use everything from river and creekside habitats like sandy banks and sandbars to even the cottonwood gallery forest that you'll see lining the riverbanks or farmland around riparian areas. That could include wet meadows, that could include bogs and fens, even emergent pond and lake vegetation. And yeah, riparian areas also are a host to many important bird species across Montana. Healthy riparian areas only cover about 3 to 4% of Montana's landscape, but it's arguably the most important habitat for birds, animals, plants, and insects. Of the more than 250 bird species in Montana, over 50% use riparian areas as their primary nesting habitat, and many others even use the areas during non-breeding season. That includes waterfowl and water birds, which particularly rely on these as migration stopover areas. So as you can see, everything from songbirds to bald eagles, even flycatchers, terns, need these important habitats. When we start to ask where great blue herons are in Montana, the typical first step is to query their range. And with so many species, when we query the range, we come back with a few different answers. If you look on the left, that's a broader range of great blue herons. And if you look close enough, you'll see that Western Montana and Northwestern Montana are not in their year-round range or even their breeding range. But when we zoom in closer to Montana, you'll see that the eastern range is considered migratory, whereas the western, they can be found year-round. Yeah, and looking at information closer from home, we see that the range that we're a little bit more familiar with. And we can even take a look at this other map. This is from eBird. This is eBird's range map for the species. And we'll get a pretty real-time picture. It's kind of hard to decipher, but the blue areas is population density. So it's a little bit, you'll get different answers for bird ranges no matter where you look. And unlike many of the 433 species that we call Montana birds, great blue heron are not so commonly reported in our early history. So though we are familiar with a lot of locations across the state, known as rookeries, from a status and trend monitoring standpoint, most of what we know in Montana comes from the 2009 to 2011 Western Colonial Water Bird Survey. So we can see a lot of our official data is actually pretty old. It's almost a decade old. So that's why this work is so important. And as we mentioned earlier, we do have an understanding, a general understanding of where they are. If you look on here, each one of these green points represents either a current nesting site or a historic nesting site in the state data. So they are species of concern, and we need to ask why. This map represents the population trends across North America, well, across America, for great blue herons. If you look closely, you can see that anything from red to yellow is a decrease in population, with red being anything greater than a decrease in 1.5% of the population per year, and blue, which is pretty interesting too, is an increase in population above 1.5. But overall, their status is due to the 2% annual decrease in population numbers as measured by the breeding bird surveys from 1966 to 2015. And all of these factors, the population trend, the state concern status. We're getting a little echo, sorry. The age of our most reliable data is moved to the great blue heron, or it has moved the great blue heron to the top of our research priorities list. So here's a little bit of background on how this survey came to be last year. One of the first ideas that the Montana Natural Heritage Project had was an experiment to see if we could use Google Earth and aerial imagery to find rookeries from the comfort of our own desks. So if you look there in the bottom right, that's Bo doing some of the first research, trying to determine current rookery sites with these aerial images. And unlike most projects, surveying this way is very low cost and easy to execute, even in hard to access areas of the state. So zooming in, they started with 5 important bird area sections. Bo trained himself to be able to pick out the telltale signs of a rookery using historic rookery locations. And then he would cross-reference the rookery locations with this aerial imagery to find things like in the bottom right corner, as you can see, there's a historic rookery that was confirmed through Google Earth. And so he would flag these areas that we're now surveying. But to cut to the chase, what we found is really encouraging. You can ignore most of the table here, but notice we found 85 historic rookeries in that survey that Bo conducted, and 8 of what we would consider as new rookeries. So this method definitely appears effective, but there's only one way to figure out if it works, and that's from all of us. We still need to get into the field to see how many nests are active and to see how many adults are present, if any. Without a plan for a renewed water bird survey effort across the region, the next step was to figure out a way to get into the field. So last year, we launched our citizen monitoring program. We've been piloting sites across the state and chose our initial sites based on that aerial surveys, historic data, and simply the ease of access for some of these sites. Each site was handpicked, and while we may find that some sites no longer harbor rookeries, the information is important too. Many of these rookeries have not been visited in almost a decade, so it's really important that we get out there. So the next part of the talk will focus more on what we were looking for and how to do it. Sorry, my slide's not changing. Trying to, okay, went a little far there. So when we started a project, we need to know what we're looking for. And here's a little bit about the Great Blue Heron. Large and majestic species with a slate gray body, slate gray to blue body, long sinuous neck, yellow bill, striking black eyebrow that extends to long plumes emerging from its crown. They can be pretty tall with an average wingspan of 6 feet, and the adult stands at a striking 3 feet, though they only weigh about 5 to 6 pounds. In flight, wing beats are slow and wings are held slightly arched while the neck may be extended or held close to the body. In flight, the blue of the back contrasts with the darker toned light feathers, and overall the blue color and stature are unique, making the bird unmistakable. Herons are also well adapted to their water habitats. Their long legs, oh, can you get that, Carmen? Someone's calling. Their long necks allow them to hunt in deep waters or along shallow shores, and their special neck vertebra allows them to curl their neck into an S shape that you can see in that photo there. We also need to know what a rookery looks like, ranging in size from 1 to a few to many dozens of nests. Heron colonies are found mostly often along major waterways and mature cottonwood galleries. So that picture is a pretty good representation of what you would see in the field. Typically, you're looking for that platform structure. They're usually not as deep. You know, if you see a really deep nest, it could be an eagle, but if they have that platform-like structure, it's pretty much a dead ringer for a great blue heron. They can also nest on the ground though. They're a little bit harder to find, and there are only a few confirmed ground nesting great blue herons in the state. They can nest in mangroves or on structures such as duck blinds, channel markers, or even artificial nest platforms. Male great blue herons collect much of the nest material, gathering sticks from the ground and nearby shrubs, and the female weaves a platform in a saucer-shaped nest cup, lining it with pine needles, moss, reeds, dry grass, mangrove leaves, or small twigs. The nest building process can take 3 days or up to 2 weeks, and the finished nest can range from a platform measuring 20 inches across to even more elaborate structures as they nest in the same place over years. And even though great blue herons have been known to move nesting locations semi-regularly due to disturbance, like the presence of a nesting eagle, they're actually pretty comfortable, even nesting alongside double-crested cormorants or great horned owls. I even saw a rookery out at the Helena regulating reservoir where Canada geese were hopping up into the trees next to them. I don't know if they were fighting, but they were getting along, it seems. And the timing of their nesting season directly impacts their survey window. So here in Montana, great blue heron start nesting pretty early. Courtship starts as early as March, with egg laying in April through early May. This early nesting period is the time during which rookeries are most sensitive. And so that's why our surveying period is after that sensitive period. And I think Carmen is going to hop on and take over from here. She's going to go through the website and survey 123.
Perfect.
And I just want to say again, I know you guys are pretty experienced, so you didn't really have any questions, but if you do have any questions for this section, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll take care of them at the end.
Yeah, this next portion, there may be some questions that come up through here. I'll mainly be going through how to do the survey and so on and so forth. So can everybody see that okay? All right, so survey will actually begin on May 1st and go through June 10th. Last year we did have it go all the way until June 30th, but because of the foliage and the trees already leafed out pretty much by June 15th, we decided to shorten the survey period just a little bit. We do recommend, if possible, if you are free, to go earlier in the survey season, just before the leaves start to leaf out a lot more. It is a lot easier to see the herons and as well as the nests before the leaves leaf out. As well as we are only asking you to go out to the Rookery one time for that 1 hour survey. Do plan to be there for maybe an hour and a half. And that doesn't include drive time. Survey together may take an hour and a half. And do be sure to take into consideration weather. We don't want you to go out and survey in wind, rain, fog, even snow. You know, it can be 70 one day and snowing the next day, you never know. But of course, we want you to survey in more ideal conditions, as well as in the morning is more preferable before the heat of the day. And I will say all of these next coming materials on this presentation that I'm giving right now is all available online. And in the next few slides, I'll help you find where you can access all of those on our website. Some more materials that are available is our fact sheet. Pretty much a simplified version of what Peter just walked through, if you want a written out version of what he just said. We also have available our protocol. It did change a little bit from last year. We did add in what to do if you go to Rookery and there are no nests, or there's nests and there's no herons. What do you do for that? So that is one new addition that we made this year. But again, both of these are available online, and I will also be going through this protocol as well. So how you can find all of those on our website is this website URL right up here, montanabirdsurveys.com. And the fact sheet is right here about Great Blue Herons. And if you were to click into the survey resources button, you will find a page that looks like this. And right here, you can get a hold of the protocol. You can print that out and bring it to your survey if you want to do that. We also have training information right here. Right now, we have last year's training recorded and up there. We plan to have this recorded and up there by next week. Right here is where you can choose the survey sites and view what survey sites are available all across Montana. And here we have a Survey 123 app. This is what you will be using for your data collection for the survey. If you don't have a smartphone, we are currently working on a paper data version. So just please email myself or Peter if you choose to use a paper version. Just let us know. But if you were to go into the survey sites and you were to click on a specific survey site, you would get a map just like this. Now here we can see a zoomed out view of this survey site, and there will be a green pinpoint indicating your survey location. And the blue bubble right next to it will indicate the Rookery location. So please note, this one isn't exact. We can see right here that the blue bubble is kind of in the water. So when you are surveying, there is this survey point right here, but I would be sure to survey, or just initially looking for the Rookery, look within this whole area right here. This Rookery could have moved just a little bit. Now, if you were to go into the Survey 123 button on the previous page, you can see Sorry, I have my dog in the office with me and she's tearing up some papers. Bad dog. But if you were to go into the survey 123 portion of the website, this is going to be really important because this is how you download it onto your phone. So right here, we can see step number 1. You will get on your phone and you will go into the App Store and you will type in Survey 123 for ArcGIS. And it's free, so don't worry, you don't have to worry about that. It will ask you to sign in, but right underneath that where it says to sign in, there's an option that you don't have to sign in. So don't worry about that. You don't have to sign in or make an account or anything. So you will download that on your phone. And then when you are on your phone, you can open this web page here, this URL right above, and you will click this download button right here, Download Heritage Observer Collector 2.0. It will then open a new web page that will look just like this, and you'll click this download button right here. And it will automatically switch over to the Survey 123 app and start downloading. And it'll look a little something like this, is what your screen will look like. May take a few seconds, may take a few minutes, kind of just depends on your Wi-Fi connection. And then when it is completed and downloaded, it will look an icon like this. Now, when you are ready to start your survey, you'll click into that icon and then you will click this collect button. But before you start your survey, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions about this Survey 123 portion. It can be a little confusing. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat box. Now say you are at your survey site, but before you actually start your survey and or open up your app and get that going, we have that recommended pinpoint, that green pin drop that I mentioned on the map previously. I do recommend that you walk up or down the road, either like north or south, just to get different vantage points of the Rookery. And you may find one that's better 50 feet up the road. By all means, go for that better vantage point. You don't have to stay at that specific pin drop that we recommended for you guys. And also, while you are walking up and down, try to get a total count of the nests while doing this, especially because some nests can be hidden behind some dense foliage. And also be cautious, use your best judgment if human presence is disturbing the Rookery. In some circumstances, being closer than 300 meters to the nest on foot or even 200 meters in a vehicle, it may be unavoidable. But again, use your best judgment. We don't want to add added disturbance to the Rookery. For example, there's a Rookery that is only about 150 meters from the road, and it's actually a semi-busy road. So you're more likely to not disturb the Rookery because it already has that human presence on a daily basis. Now, the second example would be if you were to be surveying a remote Rookery. If this Rookery happens to not have a lot of human activity, please try not to go closer than 300 meters. This is very important because we are surveying them at a sensitive time. The herons could either be nesting, they could be incubating at this point, or they could already have juveniles. If herons experience disturbance, they are known to abandon the Rookeries altogether, even if they already have eggs in their nest. And some ways that you can tell if they are acting like they are disturbed, say for instance, when you first got to the Rookery site, they were laying in their nests, they were calm, and maybe 20 minutes later, they start to be a little bit more active, they're out of their nests, they could be flapping their wings, they could be a little bit more vocal, so on and so forth, if they start flying around. Sometimes they could find the lens of your binoculars and or scope disturbing. They may be looking at you more. So again, just use your best judgment. Most of the rookery locations that we have picked out to survey tend to be in more populated human areas. So I don't think this is something that you necessarily have to worry about for every rookery site, but it's just something to take into consideration. And here's actually a really good example. Here's Bo standing. He's actually standing on that road, and the rookery is only about 150 meters right behind him. So this is a good example of, this road is pretty well used and pretty well traveled. So Bo doesn't have to worry about disturbing the rookery. So now that you're at the survey site and you've picked the perfect observation point, and now you can get out your phone to start the data collection. You first want to fill out your name. The start date is actually automatically populated once you open the Heritage Observer Collector. The end date is one that you will have to put in. It will be, of course, the same date as the start date. And now, right below that is a map, the location of the organism. This can be a little tricky to work. The pin is automatically set to where you are physically standing. So if possible, we would like for the pin to be where the rookery is located. And now how you can do that is you can tap on that map and it will actually expand to the whole screen. And you can move the pin drop to where the rookery is located. Now, if you have a high confidence in where you put the pin drop and the location of the rookery, put a 50 for the spatial precision just below. Now, if the pin ends up not being where you want it to be and you end up 5 miles north of you, don't worry, you can always recenter it by pressing this little compass button. Right where that blue arrow is, that says compass. You can tap on that and it'll bring you right back to where you are physically standing and you can start over. Once again, it is more ideal for survey and data collection if you can get that pinpoint to be where the rookery is located. But don't worry if you can't, it can be a little finicky to work sometimes. Now, if you are not able to get it work, once again, don't worry. You can put the spatial precision as either 200 to 300 meters. And that just means that the rookery is within 200 to 300 meters of where that pin drop is. Perfect. So then you'll keep scrolling down. This is all on one page. And here you will describe the habitat notes. You will record information such as if it's in a cottonwood stand, ponderosa pines, Russian olive, if it's in bulrush on the ground. You can describe the vegetation structure, have leaves emerged, is there any foliage obstructing the observation of the rookery, so on and so forth. Also mentioning things like if there's double-crested cormorants nesting with them as well, or a great horned owl. Or Canadian geese has taken over the rookery. Unfortunately, that happens. So just things that would be important to note, of course. And for the location description is where you would put where you are observing from. So here, just a brief example, you can read a road pullout on I-90, mile marker 145. The road is on the south side of the road. And we want to make this so that it is detailed enough so that the observer can find, so a future observer can find this location if need be. Now here, you'll press that next button on the last screen and you'll be presented with this number 1 right here. Now this is really important because if you don't go through these 3 steps, you will be entered into the wrong data collection survey. So this is important to follow this. Within this taxonomic group, you will scroll down until you see structured survey. You will tap on that And once you do tap on that, another box will pop up just below named Survey Taxa Group. You will once again scroll down until you see Bird. And once you tap on Bird, another box will pop up just below that one, and it'll say Survey Protocol. And for this one, you scroll until you see Great Blue Heron Rookery. And this is how you are entered or get access to the correct data. Sometimes we had issues last year, people just going into Bird, or initially just going into Bird on the very first step, in that they unfortunately collect the wrong data. And we have to make them do it over again. So this is important so that you get into the right survey data collection. Now that this is specific for the Great Blue Heron project that we're conducting in Montana. And so this question right here, map location type, is actually referencing back to that map. So this is asking whether or not it was the exact or the approximate surveyor location, or whether it was the exact or approximate rookery location. That way we just know where this pinpoint was dropped at, and just what to know or where to look. And now the next step right underneath that is the total heron nests and the active heron nests. So here, this is good for when you are walking up and down the road. Before you choose your observation point, you get that total count of the nests. And maybe even at the same time, you are counting the herons if you can. And now usually a nest is considered active when there's a fresh whitewash on the edge of the nest. Adults are on or directly next to the nest. An adult is incubating, or there's nestlings or juveniles are present in the nest. Nestlings can actually be seen in the nest at about 3 weeks old, which is pretty exciting. So let's see here. Here's a really great picture to show nestlings 1 to 2 weeks old, nestlings 2 to 4 weeks old, 4 to 6, and 6 to 8 weeks old. Pretty cute, fuzzy little guys, but they grow really fast, of course. And I will say sometimes when you are conducting your survey, you may only be able to see this top portion of their head. And it may not even look like they are in the nest because they're just incubating and they're ducked down. So do pay attention for herons that may pop up in the middle of your survey. It will happen. And so here is actually, once you get to this point in the app, is when the 1 hour survey will begin. Now we broke down the survey into 4 15-minute increments to get a good count on the activity of the rookery and the herons that may be coming and going. I do suggest setting a 15-minute timer for each increment and just resetting it for when each increment restarts. And the reason why we broke these up into 4 15-minute increments is because we are trying to capture the nest exchanges, the herons coming and going, and we want to be able to get that highest population count. So I did fill out an example of what a survey may look like. So we can see here that for increment number 1, 3, and 4, there were only 6 herons present at the rookery. But during increment number 2, there was actually a nest exchange. So the count went up to 7. And that is actually, that 7 number is what you would indicate as the maximum adult heron count. Now you don't count herons that you don't physically see at the rookery at the time of the increment. So we know that there's, 1 heron off feeding somewhere, but since he's not physically at the nest or the rookery, we don't count them for the remaining 2 increments. And of course, juveniles, they may be hard to see depending on what time of the survey period you go to. If you go at the beginning, somewhere around May 1st, you may not be able to see them. If you go in the later of the survey period, you may be able to see them. Who knows? It kind of varies in time frame. I do also want to mention that this is where we added in the new portion of the protocol. So say if you get to a survey location and there are no herons, there's no nests, or there are nests, but there's no herons. Don't be discouraged. This is the exact up-to-date information we are looking for. The last big survey, as Peter mentioned, was conducted in 2011, so almost 10 years now. And we have rookeries ranging from even the 70s all the way up until 2011, 2016. And so this is the data we're looking for. If the nests or if the rookery location comes up negative and there's nothing there, don't be discouraged. This is because we need this information. We need to know if that rookery is there or not. So it's still good. And what you do for that, say for instance, if there are nests, you would still count the number of nests, but for this, the actual survey count period, you would only stay there for about 20 minutes and survey about 200 meters in each direction to see if any herons are coming and going within the area. If any do happen to land in the rookery, so on and so forth, just to keep an eye out to see if you can possibly find where a new rookery may have popped up. It could have moved just 50 feet down the road. Still good information to know. Yeah, and as we know, there has been a lot of growth in Montana in definitely the more recent years, and so herons have been known to move around, and so probably due to that growth, they're moving to more remote locations. And here's actually in the survey comments just underneath the juvenile count, you can put in survey comments such as incubating, if there was nest exchanges, if there was feeding, anything that you would view as noteworthy to mention in the survey. Now, that's where you will put it into the survey comments here. You can also put in, nest building, exercising their wings, or the juveniles fighting, so on and so forth. Anything that you feel would be noteworthy. We also highly encourage you to submit photos of the rookery if you can. We actually don't get these photos that come through the Survey 123 app. So if you can also send myself and Peter an email of photos of the rookeries, that would be very much appreciated, as well as you surveying the rookeries. We always love to see people in our pictures. We always seem to get pictures of the birds, but never the people in them, ever. And one of the last steps is add another record. Now, this would only be if there was, double-crested cormorants that were nesting with the herons, or if there was a great horned owl. This is where you would add another bird record in this plus mark right here. And now, once you have done that, you will press that check mark, and you'll actually get to this slide right here. There will be 3 options you have. You can either send it later. The data will be stored within the app, and you can access it at any time and send whenever you are ready. You can either, if you're confident and you're ready to go, you can send it right away. The data will be immediately sent to the Montana Natural Heritage Program, where it will be sorted out, and they will be using that data. Or you can continue this survey. You can go back through and edit if you just want to double check, so on and so forth. But if you actually click send later, this is what it will look like at a later date. If you press send later, you close out the app, you go home, and you want to review it just once more before you submit it. You'll go back into the app, you'll click on the Heritage Observer icon, and you'll see this. outbox, and it has a little number 1 in it. And you'll click into that and you'll see here, and you can click into there and you'll have the data again. And you can review it and take your time. You can send it whenever you would like. For this, I'm not sure if you have to reset the start date. So just make sure that the start date aligns with the survey date. I'm not sure if you reopen this, if it automatically generates to the day that you are opening it 3 days later, you know. But that is the process of the Survey 123 app and going through the protocol. All the slides I just previously went through. Here, I'll stop sharing my screen. All the slides I previously just went through are actually all available on that Survey 123 section on our website. You can get, it's called the Great Blue Heron User Guide. And you can access it, go through the protocol and the Survey 123 app all at the same time. Pretty much what I just presented you. But are there any questions? I know that was a lot of information.
Christy did leave a comment. She said that you can switch out the base map on ArcGIS for an aerial photo. I think if you have another map loaded on there, you can swap it out. I do not. But if you have any tips on that, Christy, feel free to share that.
Yeah, if you are in cell phone range, you know, you have to have cell phone coverage to do this, but you can go up. I think there's let me get into the app and then there's a bar. When you click into the map, there's some bars up there, and if you click on that, it's like a menu bar, and you can choose your base map. And just the generic map that's in there isn't very useful if you can't stand under the Heron Rookery, and it doesn't really give you much of an idea of scale when you're looking at a little phone. So you can just go in and change the base map to an aerial photo, and then more easily be able to move the pin over to where the Rookery was. And the other thing that I do all the time, and I'm not going to describe how to do this, but somebody in the Heritage program could help walk you through it. But I also have the 123 app installed on my desktop, my computer here at home. And so that's usually how I enter stuff, just because it's easier for me than doing it on the phone. But I will enter things in the field sometimes as well. So that's the other alternative. But if you're not within cell coverage, you're not going to be able to get the aerial photo maps. And I'm sure there'll be a few rookeries where there's sketchy cell phone coverage. But the other thing to point out is, most people have unlimited data plans these days, but if you have a limited data plan on your cell phone, you're definitely going to want to just save it in your outbox. When you get home, get your phone on Wi-Fi and upload it then.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have a question or a comment?
I will say really quick that the computer version of the Survey 123 is available on our website. Within that Survey 123 page that we have the download button. Right beneath it, we have the user guide button, and then we have the computer data collection. So if you do want to go that route, that is available for you guys.
That's great. And I just had another comment that just scrolling around some of the rookeries, there was one and somebody else has claimed it already. But it looked like it was the survey point when I was on a road that didn't have public access.
Mm-hmm.
So if you end up going to a survey point and you realize it's not going to work out for you, I assume you can try to find a safer survey location or one that's accessible and just put it in the notes.
Yes, please. And if that does occur, please email myself or Peter to let us know about that, and we can fix it and hopefully find a new location. Yeah, we don't, please stay on public lands if possible. Unless you do know the person who owns that property. I know a couple people have reached out to some ranchers and some owners of the properties and have been able to get access to count the rookeries, which is really exciting, but only go onto the private land if you have access and if you have permission to access their land. But Christy, I would like to know which rookery that is so we can fix that right away.
Well, I'm not positive, and that's, you know, but it's the one that I think you have it called Site 13 Schmidt Road, and somebody else has already taken it. It's behind a quarry in Missoula, and I did not think that access road going in there was public. As far as I know, it's all a private road.
Yeah.
And so that one is pretty hard to see
Mhm.
from any public space.
Okay.
But they may, whoever signed up for it may know the quarry owners and get permission to drive in.
I think that is one of the ones that someone reached out and said, hey, this is not publicly accessible.
Yeah,
and they
okay.
took that away. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I do have one more question. So I'm out tooling around. So I'm assuming that you only have certain rookeries that you want surveyed this year, and those are the ones you want surveyed. But let's say we encounter a different rookery that's not on the survey list, and it may even be a known rookery. Should we enter it? Usually I just enter it in as a non-structured survey, just as an incidental location. And I assume that's what we would do with those. It's not do a structured survey there, but just say, oh yeah, well, I saw a rookery right here, and enter it in that way. Or would it screw you up if we entered it in a structured survey and actually did a full survey on it, even if it's not one of your targeted rookeries?
Right. So if it is an entirely new rookery that isn't on our sites that we currently have listed, don't worry about it. If you want to do a full survey on it, you are more than welcome to. It won't mess anything up on the back end. We would encourage you to do the survey on it. It'd be pretty exciting to have another rookery on the list. And or if you just are just passing by and you just want to enter it simply without doing the structured survey, either one.
Great.
Does anybody
So
have any other questions?
Yeah. How do we claim a rookery?
Email myself or Peter, and we would we do want to keep it as fair as possible, so please email both myself and Peter so that we aren't, because I know some of us have been some people have been emailing Peter, some people have been emailing me, which is totally fine, but just to make this process as fair as possible, we want to give everybody a chance, and so please email both myself and Peter at the same time if you can, with the name of the site, of course.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yes.
Is it okay to survey from the river, from the opposite bank, let's say, if they're pretty accessible that way?
Yeah, that's definitely all right. If you find a better way to view a rookery and it's accessible, we would say don't take a boat out on the river and do it. We're trying not to encourage boat surveys quite yet, maybe in the future. But yeah, if it's accessible from the other side of a river or something, that's totally fine.
So you don't want to do boat surveys? Okay.
Not unless you've already talked to someone about it. But so far, I think we're not doing it for the citizen science.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not even if it's in a river that already has a lot of boat traffic?
yeah, the river surveys or water surveys in general have a bit of a different protocol, and we can reach out to you about that, Peter. It just is a little bit more difficult because, well, especially being on a river, you're probably moving downstream constantly. So if you can get onto the riverbank, that would be just fine right there. But the if you are staying in the boat, that requires like a different protocol. And we can,
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, I was just thinking of using the boat to get there and being on the opposite bank so I wouldn't disturb them. But it's not necessary if it's got good road access. It's just something I floated the Clark Fork yesterday, I guess it was, and saw a rookery from the far bank, and I thought, hey, this is probably one that somebody's already claimed, but just a nice way to get there.
totally. More recreation, why not? I mean, as long as where you are surveying from is on public land, which most likely the riverbank is going to be public. So
Right.
perfect.
I have a question.
Yes.
So does anybody have any experience or knowledge of, and Peter, I think I emailed you this, but about Lake Francis up in Valier? There's an island across from the boat launch there, and it's a large rookery there on one end of it, and then the other end is a large cormorant rookery. It's impressive the amount of just activity and stuff that's there. I haven't been up there now. I didn't make it up last year at all, but for the three successive years prior to that, just on my own, just going and finding it every spring. I mean, seeing it, it's huge.
Yeah, that's great to know. I just looked it up on Google Maps really quick to see where Valier is at in the first place. But if you do end up going out there, you are more than welcome to survey that one.
Okay. And then, so I'm new to Billings. And I see down there Region 7 and our sites that are listed. Any suggestions on any of them as far as I'm new to this and new to Billings?
Sorry, I'm pulling up the sites here. I'm also new to Montana. I moved here last year, so I'm still getting some bearings.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say, poke around and look and see what seems accessible to you or most fun. If there's, hiking nearby that you want to check out at the same time, I'd recommend. I mean, some of these, it does look like they're pretty easy to pop over and check out off of bridges and stuff. But sorry, did I interrupt someone there?
We're not confined to like Region 7, right? We can go wherever we would want. Cool.
No.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Perfect. Do we have any more questions? Well, please, if you do have any questions at any point throughout the, within this next week or throughout the entire survey period, please reach out to both myself and Peter. Ask us any questions if you're curious about anything. We'll be here to help you, and we want you to have a really smooth survey. So that's what we are here for.
All right.
Yeah, and so just shoot us an email with the sites you're interested in, and let us know if you would like a paper copy. Janet Kempf was kind enough to write up her own survey thing, and she sent it out to us. So we may make a few additions and have a paper copy that people can use if they prefer that too. Great. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Yeah, it was
All right.
great to meet you all over Zoom.
Very nice presentation. Thank you.